Hello and welcome to this Friday edition of the World Report with me, Arjun Samar, behind viewers. Let's take a look at what's making global headlines today. Let's first get you the latest coming in from the West Asia crisis. You see, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he's said that Washington will impose the toughest sanctions in history to collapse the Iranian government, calling on other nations, including China, here to join the effort. Beijing, meanwhile, has criticized the economic D-Day push against Iran, warning that additional sanctions will fail to resolve ongoing disputes. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry, however, it's condemned the US threat, describing the proposed measures as illegal and humane. Moving to Israel, you see the country plans to open up tenders for the construction of some 1,200 odd settlements in the occupied West Bank, which has sparked fresh condemnation by major Western powers. In fact, in a joint declaration, the UK, France, Germany, Italy and Canada have called the decision unacceptable. They've also urged Israel to retract any plans it has immediately. Meanwhile, the US-Iran war appears to be entering a new phase now, or should I say another phase. And the objective is quite clear here. Break the deadlock. The Trump administration, it's declared an economic D-Day on Iran, as I was just mentioning, vowing historic sanctions now. However, it is more than meets the eye, as the US itself, it seems to be caught in a predicament at a crossroads. Well, this report tells you more.
Six months into this war, and Washington is switching weapons. Not missiles, money. US President Donald Trump has threatened tremendous economic consequences on any country that helps or does business with Tehran. Brent crude spiked to its highest level since July, the market reacting within hours of Vice President J.D. Vance declaring the conflict has entered a new phase. And Iran is already under some of the harshest sanctions on earth. A near-total ban on Iranian oil exports, its central bank frozen out, shipping and petrochemical sectors blacklisted. While US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is promising the toughest sanctions in history, Trump is calling it an economic D-Day. But Tehran isn't blinking. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has fired back, dismissing the threat as a smokescreen for America's own debt crisis. And here is where it hits home. India relies on the Strait of Hormuz for nearly half its crude imports. Any renewed blockade risks pushing prices even higher. And Iranian crude itself, briefly back on the table after sanctions were eased earlier this year, is once again off limits with a 60-day waiver expiring. Washington itself seems to be caught in a catch-22 situation. Military strikes have already failed to force Tehran to the table, and the latest economic warfare could inflate prices for Americans at the pump. Squeeze Iran harder, and energy costs punish Washington and its partners alike. Ease off, and Tehran calls it weakness. Bureau Report for NDTV World.
Shifting focus, a Cameroon-flagged cargo ship was hijacked by pirates of Somalia's Puntland coast earlier this week. At least 6 Indians are also among the ship's 10-member crew here. The merchant vessel LUTEF or Lutuf, it was seized on Monday about 3.5 nautical miles off Maraya in Puntland's Isle district. According to Somali officials, pirates took the ship towards the region's Nugal coast. The ship was carrying weapons bound for a Turkish military training facility in Mogadishu, as well as communications and satellite equipment. By the way, it was owned by Polar Movement Shipping. The battle for Hormuz control is intensifying, with Donald Trump claiming an upper hand now. Meanwhile, American news outlets, they're citing new shipping data to suggest that tankers are bypassing Iran's preferred route. Now, this comes after Trump says Iran has lost control of the strategic waterway. Here's the report.
The Strait of Hormuz continues to remain a key battleground in the Iran war. Both Tehran and Washington claim control, but recent shipping data suggests the US is gaining the upper hand. More than 80% of liquid cargo traffic over the past 2 weeks has used the Omani route. The route runs along Oman's coast, away from Iran's preferred northern passage. Despite Iranian attacks and warnings, tankers are increasingly using it under US naval protection. The US has reportedly helped 15 to 20 tankers cross safely in recent weeks. The US military says it has helped more than 1,000 ships transit the waterway. Trump says the Strait of Hormuz is open, with a lot of boats now passing through.
The strait is open. A lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point, but right now a lot of boats are coming through. The naval blockade has been extremely effective. We're going to see what happens.
But the route remains dangerous. At least 15 vessels using the southern corridor have reportedly been hit since June. And while shipping has resumed, traffic remains well below pre-war levels. But Tehran is refusing to back down. Iran's deputy foreign minister says that Hormuz remains under their command, and it will continue to enforce the stringent blockade in the strategic waters. Meanwhile, Qatar's Prime Minister says maritime routes must not be held hostage. Speaking after talks with Egypt, he said both nations are working to de-escalate tensions and keep vital waterways open.
قطر تعمل بالتشاور مع أشقائنا في مجلس التعاون وفي المنطقة لإيجاد طرق أخرى دبلوماسية مع الجانب الإيراني.
Bureau Report, NDTV World.
Switching gears, a 35-year-old Albany woman, she is facing a federal terrorism charge in New York. Authorities allege that she had been plotting to bomb the New York State Capitol building in an effort to kill lawmakers, as she believed that the laws that were being passed there were an insult to Islam. According to authorities, the accused, Jessica Babi, she had been under surveillance for more than a month as she communicated with at least one confidential informant posing as an ISIS or an ISIS facilitator. Investigators foiled the attack just weeks away from the anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks. We get you more.
Wednesday, August 19, 2026, Bowie was apprehended by law enforcement for her actions attempting to provide material support to designated foreign terrorist organizations. Bowie had plotted to use an explosive device to attack the New York State Capitol and the New York State senators. The American people embody an enduring spirit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, values fundamentally opposed by foreign terrorists. Organizations such as this one and this defendant is accused of supporting.
20 migrants deported from the US have arrived in Liberia on Thursday. Now, this marks the first batch of an eventual 1,200 deportees that the West African country will receive from the US under a new deal. The first deportees, they arrived at the Roberts International Airport outside Monrovia. Under a series of often secret agreements, the Trump administration, it's deported thousands of people to 24 countries here that aren't their own as it pushes ahead with its immigration crackdown. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's appeal for the opportunity to secure more Patriot missiles on Thursday once again. The president is seeking to boost his country's air defenses following another series of Russian attacks. Speaking in his nightly video address, Zelensky said Ukraine was ready to buy the weapons rather than receive them as gifts, but he still stressed that its partners, they first need to make the necessary political decisions. Listen in.
На жаль, з балістикою найскладніше зараз. Якщо відсоток збиття крилатих ракет в цьому ударі близько 90%, то з балістикою ситуація значно гірша. Потрібні ракети для патріотів – це те, що можуть забезпечити тільки наші партнери. На всіх рівнях ми доводимо до них і нашу потребу, і те, що ми знаємо, що...
Now this attack illustrates a shift in the war. Russia is intensifying its use of ballistic missiles, and Ukraine has a serious problem. It simply doesn't have enough interceptors to counter these missiles. Ukraine is deploying a different strategy of its own, one that a defense official described to me as targeting the bow rather than the arrow, that is deep strikes inside Russian territory, targeting military assets, weapons depot, anything that can degrade Russia's military capabilities and ability to launch attacks such as these But now the question remains, will that strategy work? Will we see less devastating attacks, such as the one we experienced overnight here in Kyiv and on other Ukrainian cities?
Hundreds of supporters, they've gathered in Massachusetts to silently support 36-year-old Lindsay Clancy, who's on the trial for killings of her 3 children. Many gathered wearing pink for Thursday's rally, showcasing messages on their shirts like Peace for Lindsay and Justice for Lindsay. Those gathered aim to raise awareness about the postpartum depression and also how the mental health system treats women. The trial has brought attention to postpartum psychosis. Clancy's lawyer does not dispute that she killed the children, but says she should not be held criminally liable because she was mentally ill. Two Hong Kong activists who organize annual vigils to commemorate the 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown have been found guilty of inciting others to subvert state power under the city's controversial national security law. 69-year-old Lee Chuk-yan and 41-year-old Chow Hang-tung, they face a maximum penalty of 10 years in jail after being convicted under the China-introduced law. Sentencing is expected at a later date. However, Hong Kong used to be one of the only places in the Chinese territory where people could gather to mark the deadly 1989 crackdown against the pro-democracy protesters. Authorities banned these gatherings in 2020, citing COVID policies, but they never resumed. Now, this was also the year the national security law, which makes illegal a wider range of dissenting acts, officially came into force. Summer of extreme heat has left many Tunisians short of water and electricity and full of anger as the country's leadership protesters rallied in the capital Tunis on Thursday, with many calling on President Kais Saied to leave power. Demonstrators pleaded for improvements to basic utility services, an end to medicine shortages, rising living costs and restrictions on freedoms. The protests come during a summer of extreme heat in Tunisia, with temperatures reaching up to 50 degrees Celsius in some parts of the country. The heat wave has pushed electricity demand to record levels and led state-owned utility STEG or STEG to introduce rationing measures in several regions. The power cuts also affected water pumping stations, exacerbating long-running concerns over the access to drinking water in parts of the country. Unions, political parties and social organizations, they marched to the Economy Ministry building in Argentina. Demonstrators protested for the millions of Argentines who are suffering from debt in a stagnant economy and insufficient wages. According to recent central bank stats, nearly half of its 45 million population, they've taken on debt primarily with banks and virtual wallets, with about 5 billion of those debtors in default. What's worse, personal loans and credit cards account for more than 70% of the overdue balance. The delinquency rate with the financial institutions, mainly banks in this case, it's reached 7.6% in May 19, months of uninterrupted growth, setting a record high that surpasses any figures from the last 2 decades. Shifting focus, Cameroon President Paul Biya has returned to the country on Thursday after more than 2 months abroad, with crowds of supporters waiting to welcome him. The 93-year-old leader's prolonged absence has sparked public concerns about his health and criticism as well over a potential power vacuum in the Central African nation. Biya arrived aboard a flight from Geneva and waved from the back of a car as he left the airport in a motorcade. The 93-year-old left Cameroon on the 7th of June for what his office officially described as a brief private stay in Europe. Now, the trip became his longest known absence from the country since assuming office. The world's oldest sitting president, he has also led Cameroon since 1982. He began his 8th term in November after winning a widely disputed presidential election in October last year. In South Asia, Pakistan's former Prime Minister, or should I say jailed former Prime Minister Imran Khan, has been transferred back to the Diyala jail after a brief stay at a hospital where doctors conducted a medical checkup. The 73-year-old former Prime Minister was moved early on Friday from Rawalpindi's Diyala jail to private Shifa International Hospital in the capital Islamabad under tight security, to say the least. A specialized medical team, including a cardiologist and ophthalmologist and a physician, the trio examined the former Prime Minister and declared him medically fit. He spent a few hours there before being moved back to prison. Over in Bangladesh, the parliament has elected a new president on Thursday after the post fell vacant last month following the resignation of the former president, who was a close ally of ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. The vote confirmed the expected victory of Mirza Fakhrul Islam Alamgir, a veteran of the ruling Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or the BNP. Alamgir got 255 votes to 88 for challenger Uli Ahmed of the opposition Jamaat-e-Islami Party and its allies. A total of 349 members of parliament were eligible to vote in what was the first contested presidential election since October 1991. Now that's when the nation became a parliamentary democracy in the first place. Well, with that, it's time we slip into a short break. News and updates, they continue. On the other hand, we'll be right back. Welcome back. A magnitude 6.7 earthquake has shook Peru's southern Andes Mountains on Thursday. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the quake occurred at around 1 p.m. local time and was centered 38 kilometers northwest of the city of Upaucho and had a depth of 66 kilometers. The quake was felt in several regions of southern Peru, including in capital Lima. According to authorities, 2 people were injured while evacuating their homes in Coracora. Authorities also reported damages to 22 homes, 6 health centers, and a school across several districts. The Peruvian Navy, meanwhile, it's ruled out a tsunami threat. Earthquakes are frequent in Peru as it's an area of frequent seismic activity. At least 13 people were killed and 7 others injured when an open-pit gold mine collapsed in southeastern Colombia on Thursday. You see, firefighters from several departments, they carried out search and rescue ops with local residents providing heavy machinery assistance. According to local authorities in Nariño, the mine was operating illegally. You see, gold from these illegal mines, it's usually and used by arms groups to finance their activities, including transnational drug trafficking. Tens of thousands of residents in northwestern Indiana are living in survival mode as they endure a 9th day without power, believe you me. Residents continue to throw out spoiled food, lining up for hot meals and searching for places to charge their phones. In Indiana, schools remain closed after the deadly August 11th storm toppled trees and power lines across the region. Residents turned to social media to find open laundromats and working Wi-Fi, while others sought food, diapers and wipes for low-income neighbors. U.S. First Lady Melania Trump has announced new scholarships for her Fostering the Future initiative in partnership with IndyCar. The announcement came on Thursday ahead of the Sunday's Freedom 250 Grand Prix race in downtown Washington. The program provides youth in foster care with educational scholarships, career training, and of course, account designed to help build financial independence. IndyCar, the sanctioning body for the U.S. auto racing, joined Fox Corp to donate $2 million in scholarships, by the way, for the program at Indiana and Purdue universities. Now, both Indiana-based schools are joining about 24 other institutions of higher learning to offer scholarships through Mrs. Trump's initiative. ChatGPT creator, it said on Tuesday that they're tapping the brakes on development of its most advanced AI model and tightening internal controls. Now, this comes after a month the company revealed a cyber attack carried out by one of its rogue models. OpenAI is a key player in the rapid global build-out of artificial intelligence infrastructure and tools as well that some have equated to an arms race. The company is holding off conducting the biggest AI training run it has ever planned as it checks whether the model that would result would behave as expected or not. Amid wage negotiations, protesters gathered outside Hyundai Motor headquarters in Seoul and held a rally on Friday. It was the first time the Hyundai Motor Union staged an all-out strike in 10 years, in a decade, since collective bargaining in 2016. As roughly 39,000 workers joined Friday's protest, concerns have arisen around the production line and supply chain disruptions across the motor company's plants. The union has demanded a 50% increase in pay based on performance, coupled with an extension of the age of retirement and reinstatement of terminated members.
26일 금속노조 내려치겠어 내게 커다란 칼날이 있다면 탐욕과 경쟁의
Well, viewers, with that, it's time we step into a short break. News and updates. They continue on the other side.